Hello everyone and welcome to Dutch Greybeard. In the early days of this channel I did not use a teleprompter. I find some of those videos very difficult to watch. The content is still relevant, I think, so I decided to remake a couple of them. Hopefully viewers will cringe less while watching this video, and it is nice to give some of my older reading experiences a new life. My spoiler-free reading experience of the Chronicles of Prydain by Lloyd Alexander was the 6th video I made. It was published on May 3 in 2023. In this remake, I more or less stick to the same script. The content is not new, so it's like old wine in a new bottle. I finished reading the 5 books of the Chronicles of Prydain written by Lloyd Alexander. The total page count is just over 1,000 pages, so in fact it might just as well be one big book. The books were published from 1964 to 1968 and they were written for a younger audience. I like to read children's books every now and then to immerse myself in that simple and innocent universe, just to remind me that life still holds promise, no matter my own age. The Book of 3, we follow the adventures of Taran of Dalban. He is an assistant pig keeper who dreams of adventure. He's drawn into the world of grown-ups when he goes chasing after Henwen, the oracular pig he's taken care of. Along the way he meets Prince Gwydion, the obligatory beautiful but feisty princess Eilenwy, as well as the shaggy but good-natured creature Gurgi, and Llwydr Flum, who is a bard and a king, and one of the funniest characters in the story. The fact that a lowly assistant pig keeper is on speaking terms with royalty requires no explanation whatsoever in any children's book. That goes as well for the fact that Taran, who wields a sword for the first time in his young life, escapes armed confrontations with seasoned soldiers unscathed. These highly unlikely twists in the story are simply not to be questioned. This would be different for adult fantasy books, of course, but as long as the reader can go along with these unwritten laws for children's books, there is a lot to enjoy in these chronicles. The adventure in the Book of 3 takes Taran all the way to the other end of Prydain. Of course, there is an evil king, Aran, and Prince Gwydion is one of the good guys, with whom Taran very quickly develops a special friendship. Aran, the Death Lord and ruler of Annuvin, intends to conquer all of Prydain. This battle will be fought in the last part of the series. The character of Gurgi is a bit too much Gollum-like for my taste. Although lovable, he talks almost like Gollum does. Gurgi is mainly focused on food, which he calls scrunchings and munchings. All 5 relatively small books, they're about this size, in this series breathe the Lord of the Rings, but that's understandable given their years of publication. The bard, Llwydr Flum, who is also the king of a small and forgotten kingdom, has a very special harp. Every time Llwydr embellishes the truth of his own bravery a bit too much, one of his harp strings snaps, or more than one. The writer has given every character his or her own way of talking. Eilenwy, for example, speaks in metaphors all the time. This is expertly done. The story is a very simple good versus evil encounter. The villains are straight away villainous in their behavior and language, so there's no mistaken there. The events follow each other quickly, which can also be said for the covering of supposedly long distances. Still, the story is fascinating, partly thanks to the humour and the picturesque language. The fairy tale-like wisdom in these books really appeal to me. Taran grows up in the household of the old enchanter Dalban. The 379 years old wizard tells Taran, In some cases, we learn more by looking for the answer to a question and not finding it than we do from learning the answer itself. I gave the Book of Three 69 points out of 100. A memorable passage is when Taran and his companions reach the hidden valley of Medwyn. The gentle Medwyn has respect for every living creature as long as they're animals. About Gurgi, for example, he says, "He has lost the wisdom of animals and has not gained the learning of men." Book 2 is the Black Cauldron. In this second book, Taran and his friends set out on a quest to find and destroy the cauldron from the title. This artifact is used by Aran Deathlord to create the so-called Cauldron-born zombie warriors. For the first time, Taran gets to use his sword in real battle, but what he anticipated as a glorious occasion turns out to be hardly that. It is as one of his brothers-in-arms says, "I have marched in many a battle host, but I've also planted seeds and reaped the harvest with my own hands. And I have learned there is greater honour in a field well ploughed than in a field steeped in blood." We also meet with 3 witches, Ordu, Orgoch, and Orwen, who say about themselves, "We're neither good nor evil. We're simply interested in things as they are." I gave The Black Cauldron the same rating as the first book, 69 points out of 100. Almost all of the dialogue is in archaic, courtly, and a cumbersome form of English, which of course gives the young reader a medieval feel, but every now and then it made me somewhat impatient. On the other hand, there is enough content that deserves quoting. I'll restrict myself to only one. The more we find to love, the more we add to the measure of our hearts. The third book, The Castle of Llyr, tells about a mission to find and rescue Eilenwy, who has fallen into the hands of the evil queen Akron. This story introduces the clumsy and hapless Prince Rune. For me, it was the least of the 3, although still delightful. I'm afraid I have nothing much to say about this installment in the series other than to mention that I gave it 67 points out of 100. In book number 4, Taran Wanderer, our hero goes on a quest to find his roots. It is obvious from the beginning that Taran's parentage remains a mystery. He secretly hopes that he is noble-born so that he can ask Princess Eilenwy in marriage, at which Gurgi says, "But kindly master is noble, generous and good to humble Gurgi." One of his other companions tells about the people of the Free Comets, a group of villages under no rule of any king or lord. What matters in the Free Comets is the skill in a man's hand, not the blood in his veins. At the end, Taran understands. If I do find pride, I'll not find it in what I was or what I am, but what I may become. Not in my birth, but in myself. On his quest, Taran encounters several commoners in the Free Comets, with various skills, a blacksmith, a potter, and a weaver. He tries to learn their craft and turns out to have a talent to work with iron and on the loom, but it feels that neither of their crafts is really meant for him. When he meets the highly skilled potter, Anlaw clay shaper, Taran knows that this is his craft. But no matter how hard he practices with clay on the turning wheel, he cannot reach mastery. When Taran asks Anlaw why the one skill he sought above all others is denied to him, the potter says, "There are those who have laboured all their lives to gain the gift, striving until the end only to find themselves mistaken, and those who had it born in them yet never knew, those who lost heart too soon, and those who should never have begun at all." So Taran's quest to find himself continues. I gave Taran Wanderer 71 points out of 100. It's the most fairy tale-like of the 5 and secretly my favourite. The closing book of this fivesome is The High King. This is no doubt the darkest of the 5. It's about the battle for Prydain, where several kingdoms join hands to try to defeat the Death Lord, Taran. Also, this book ties up the loose ends, like the parentage of Taran. Like our protagonist, the style and content of the books develop and mature. This final book drags on a little bit when Taran and his warriors try to overtake the army of Cauldron-born. And the ending is a bit too much reminiscent of Tolkien's Greyhaven's ending, although the writer thankfully makes a final twist and all comes nicely together. The closing words, "When all is well that has ended well," are superb. I gave The High King 70 points out of 100. The characters of the companions are one of the strong points of this series to me. The coming of age of Taran is endearing, and the typicalities of Fflewddur Fflom, Eilenwy, Gurgi, and the dwarf Doli, whom I have not even mentioned earlier on, are funny and make them very easy to recognize. Thank you very much for watching this video. Until we meet again at Dutch Greybeard.